producer was someone I actually worked for at the time. And it was a weird time at the station, I have to tell you, because a lot of us were asking, how could the station bring in this guy? And then we saw the show, and then we said, how could we work for the station who brought in the guy? Why did you make this movie about this guy?
Okay, well, first of all, don't tell anyone at Channel 9 how much footage we stole. That's
all right. Why Morton Downey Jr.?
Seth and I discovered that both of us were fans of the show when we were teenagers. It was something that we sort of held repressed for a long time.
Because?
Because...
Get a little closer.
Okay.
Did you guys actually go?
No, we didn't go.
You watched?
We watched.
We watched.
Okay.
Yeah, those people who are in the movie are our friends, and they all had cars and were able to go. We didn't, and we sort of we watched it from home. But we were both fans at the time, and
when you were watching as kids. Now, how old? I'm trying to get a sense. When you were watching in '88 and '89, how old were you?
This is getting very personal.
yeah.
We were around
take a guess how old we were.
17 or 18.
And you're watching Morton Downey Jr.
We were the perfect audience for this guy. We were like the target audience.
Were you screaming at the television?
Oh God, that's a great question. I can't. No, you know, I was pretty passive. I was more into like the guys he was yelling at, so I sort of rooted for them. You know.
And when you got into this, I'm not even going to ask you how you got the footage, but the people who you talked to, the producers, Bill Boggs, by the way, maybe some of you remember Bill Boggs, who actually was a television personality and also a very successful producer as well. They seemed awfully willing to share everything, and also his closest friend as well, everything about Morton Downey. Why?
Yeah, I think that.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that Morton Downey, when he had this big incident in 1989, he sort of fell off the map, and a lot of
fake incident.
The fake incident, right? And the show went away, and all his producers went on to other things. A lot of people had a lot of fun working on the show, but many of them didn't get the closure, I think, that they sort of wanted out of the whole experience. And when we called them, it was the opportunity to sort of unload about Morton Downey, about the whole experience working for him, about who he was and what he meant to them and what he meant to them. So I think it was like kind of that, not having that closure at the time, sort of allowed them to open up to us.
And I know that, and Downey would obviously scream and yell, and for those of us who were at the studio at the time, and I never worked for the show, but you would hear Morton Downey scream and yell, and he was profane and all that and everything else. Did they like him?
Oh, it's a love-hate they have. Everybody who we interviewed, from the producers to his family, they had this very unusual, unresolved relationship with the guy, where they loved him. He was a lot of fun, so he had a dynamic personality, but he also let them down.
Was it painful for his daughter? I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay.
Was
you can see that it was. You can see that it was. It was painful at the time, which I think she comes across really well. And it was painful for her to relive it, but cathartic. It took some convincing for her to do it.
How'd you do that?
We convinced her to do it, and then she refused again. Right. And then we convinced her again, and then she didn't want to do it. So finally we convinced her, and then we had the interview, and it was a great interview. And then she didn't want to. She said, "That's enough." She didn't want to come to the premiere at Tribeca because it was just she lived the experience, and she didn't want to relive it again. So I think what she said on film was kind of enough for her, and that seemed to be the case with a lot of people we spoke to.
And his closest friend? How painful was it for him? By the way, was that the first time that he disclosed that story about the fact that Mort Downey, he did the swat? By the way, he's terrible with the swastika.
Right.
Backwards.
Right.
He did it himself?
We're both Jewish. We could do that with our eyes closed. Yes, he did that himself. And that was, we got the scoop on that story. Not only the scoop on that story, but the fact that the guy, we're interviewing him, and he pulls out the shirt.
He's got the
pants and everything.
And the other one wasn't even ripped, it was cut.
Right.
So he shares that. And Lori, I'm curious about this. What's the deal there? Was that the first time she heard that story?
Yeah, we're still waiting to get... She hasn't seen the completed movie yet. I mean, this is very painful for her as well. We had an unusual relationship where we've been talking with... We started working on this movie 4 years ago. We've been talking to her for 4 years. She did not agree to be interviewed. She didn't want to do it. It's painful. She would retreat, then she'd come back to us again. And so, you know, at some point we'll sit down, but she probably knows at this point that it wasn't true.
Let me ask you, do you believe that story that he did it not for ratings, not for attention, but to get Lori, this much younger woman, to simply feel sorry for him and take him? Do you believe that version of it?
Well, you know, it's funny because like Lori, as everyone portrayed her to us, was the one person who he couldn't bring into his world entirely, you know, and it sort of made sense to us because the show was a huge hit at the time, and despite the ratings, it's like, why would anyone do something so insane? And, you know, Lloyd has long held that sort of theory, and it kind of, I guess, made sense to us at the time.
Did you guys, I'm curious about this, because Al Sharpton, what strikes me, what's fascinating me, is that Al Sharpton still has a career at MSNBC with a primetime show, interviewing people in a serious way, not ever having to explain to on a Broadway. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Question: did you try to speak to the Reverend Al Sharpton?
Right. We've tried to speak to the Reverend Al Sharpton and also Al Sharpton.
That's a good
Right?
one.
No, we have the distinction of being the only media opportunity that man has ever turned down. We tried for 4 years to get him.
No way. He did not say no to you.
He didn't say no. This is how it played out. He said yes. And then there was a date on the calendar, and then the date would come by, and then he would have something to do. And then that played out for a long time. So we got the message. And then we thought, okay, maybe he doesn't want to talk to us. We get that. So what if we do this? We have this moment where we found in a commercial break where he calls someone a punk faggot.
Okay, remember, go back into the scene. I believe they're at the Apollo Theater, where the whole situation with Roy Ennis takes place. So there's a lot of back and forth. That was the time where Ennis pushes him. Right. Doesn't actually punch him, pushes him, craziness goes on. But this is before that actually happened.
Right.
He yells out to whom?
He's just fighting with someone in the audience. He doesn't know that the cameras are on. It didn't air.
Never aired.
No, we found that in the original tapes.
Go ahead.
So what we thought was, okay, well maybe Al Sharpton does not want to talk to us. He loves a fight. So maybe we'll put this on the internet. We'll do a little movie trailer, put it on the internet. Then we'll get him to talk to us. So fight, you know? Right. That didn't work either. I guess we should have known. But then that was the last straw. They're like, okay, you put that up, forget it. There's no chance. We're not
and I'm pretty sure my old friends at MSNBC had nothing to say about this either. Do they want to act? Do people want to act like it never happened? Like, everyone does understand that you saw the Tawana Brawley thing never happened.
Right.
He never explained it, never apologized for it, nothing.
Right.
And he was close to Mort Downey.
Right. Yeah, and it seemed to us that he knew that our movie would sort of delve into these issues, and that's, you know, why we had this back and forth with him and why he ultimately refused.
Okay, last question before I open it up.
Yeah.
When you look at a lot of the, see, it's interesting because I don't want to say a lot of the television today, the louder, more obnoxious television today, and I don't want to just paint that from an ideological point of view because it goes a lot of different ways. It's not just right, but mostly right. But I've never seen Glenn Beck do that. I've never seen Sean Hannity, who's usually a gentleman, do that. I've seen Rush Limbaugh do a lot of that, but only on the radio. Didn't do particularly well on television. And Glenn Beck is not on primetime television anymore. How much of what Morton Downey did in the late 1980s do you believe was a precursor to what we have come to see on television today on 24/7 cable?
People were doing the Morton Downey Jr. act for a long time, and they were doing it on the radio mainly. And he was one of the first people to really, really bring it to, not just to bring that kind of act to TV, but also to bring in younger people and males. You know, a lot of people that were into like the right-wing talk, and it is largely right-wing, were like old people playing cards.
Why do you think that is?
I think, you know, I think it just, this is a great question. We asked ourselves this a lot. I think a lot of it has to do with the right is just great at it. You know, the right, you know, the most incredible, passionate narrative in the world is the American story. And when people on the right talk about their politics, they're constantly weaving in the American story and the flag. And that works really well. Whereas like people on the left, it's like, let's talk about healthcare and let's see what the French are doing and the Canadians are doing. It doesn't have the same sort of.
Boring.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a lefty. I'm more inclined